little boy 2 years old and under who lived in Bethlehem and its surrounding hills. That's when Jeremiah's sermon was fulfilled. A sound was heard in Ramah, weeping and much lament. Rachel weeping for her children. Rachel refusing all solace. Her children gone, dead and buried. Later, when Herod died, God's angel appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. Up, take the child and his mother, and return to Israel. All those out to murder the child are dead. And Joseph obeyed. He got up, took the child and his mother, and re-entered Israel. When he heard, though, that Archelaus had succeeded his father Herod as king in Judea, he was afraid to go there. But then Joseph was directed in a dream to go to the hills of Galilee. On arrival, he settled in the village of Nazareth. This move was a fulfillment of the prophetic words, "He shall be called a Nazarene." May God bless to our understanding the reading of this scripture this day. Chris Hodges, in the prologue to his book, Losing Moses on the Freeway, tells a story from 1983. When he was in a United Nations camp for Guatemalan refugees in Honduras. Those who were in the camp had fled fighting, and most had seen family members killed. Hodges writes, "The refugees in the camp, when I arrived on a dreary January afternoon, were decorating the tents and wooden warehouses with colored paper. They told me they would celebrate the flight of Mary and Joseph and the infant Jesus to Egypt to escape the slaughter ordered by Herod of the children." "Why?" I asked one of the peasants. "Why was this an important day?" "It was on this day that Christ became a refugee," they answered. It was on this day that Christ became a refugee. He goes on to write, "I knew this Bible passage by heart. I had heard my father read it every year. But until that moment, standing in a muddy refugee camp with a man who may not have been able to read, I did not understand it. The passage meant one thing to me and another to the parents who had swept children into their arms and fled to escape death." While most of our homes are still decorated for Christmas this morning, and family Christmas celebrations may yet continue today, most of us would not intentionally celebrate and choose to decorate our homes for the flight of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus to Egypt, to escape the slaughter of children ordered by Herod. In fact, if the truth were known, most of us would prefer just to ignore this scripture this morning. But here it is. In the second chapter of Matthew's Gospel. And it's part of a drama that takes place in 3 scenes. The first scene follows the departure of the Magi, when an angel of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream. Imagine, Father, fathers. You're sound asleep, and your dream is interrupted by an angel insisting that you get up and take your child and your wife and flee at once to some faraway place. And the only explanation coming in the dream is that there is about to be a search and destroy mission for your child. What do you do? Well, Joseph was taking no chances when it came to protecting his family. They leave in the middle of the night and begin the 100-mile journey from Bethlehem to the Egyptian border. They are refugees, forced to leave one country to escape persecution by going to another. Joseph has no idea when he flees Bethlehem for Egypt how long he will be in Egypt, or whether he will ever see his homeland again. Matthew, however, gives us a clue in the writing of the story by quoting the prophet Hosea. Out of Egypt I have called my son. And Matthew says that they will stay in Egypt until the death of Herod. Now, the second scene in this passage is filled with revenge and death. It's filled with terror and weeping. Herod was infuriated when he perceived that he had been tricked by the Magi. They had failed to return and to report to him where this child was born. And so this madman issues orders that all the children under the age of 2, all the male children under the age of 2 around Bethlehem should be killed. Matthew, as he tells the story, likens this event to an earlier event in the life of God's people when they were taken into exile from their homeland to Babylon. And Matthew quotes from the Hebrew Scriptures, from the prophet Jeremiah, about the bitter weeping that took place over an event that was like death itself, including the imagined weeping of Rachel, the wife of Jacob, or her descendants as they're carried off into exile. The third scene of the drama begins with the angel of the Lord reappearing to Joseph in Egypt in a dream. This time with instructions to take the child and his mother and return to Israel, for those who were seeking the child's life have died. And Joseph returns and settles in the district of Galilee in a town called Nazareth. And there Jesus would live and grow until beginning his ministry in his adulthood. Out of the refugee camp in Egypt, Jesus came to save his people. No wonder that Guatemalan refugees in a Honduras refugee camp were celebrating the flight of the Holy Family to Egypt. And the reminder and celebration of Jesus the refugee is alive today in refugee camps around the world. And among immigrant people who have left their homes to find safety and economic opportunity in a foreign land. Think of a young mother named Maria, struggling through the hot desert with her infant son, Jesus, in her arms. The hot sun beats down upon this mother and child. There's no shade. There's no water. There's no food. And they are strangers in a foreign land. And she wants safety, economic opportunity, and hope for her child. Will they survive their march through the hot deserts of southern Arizona as they search for new beginnings and new life and new hope in this promised land? They're seeking freedom. They're seeking life as they escape or are driven from their homeland in Mexico. They have been driven from their home by hunger, by drug gangs, by prostitution rings, and by oppression. Did an angel of the Lord appear to Maria and tell her to go north across the boundary into this land of safety and opportunity? Will an angel of the Lord direct them to safe passages on this journey? Will they one day find it possible to return to their home once again? And who will care for them in the meantime in this foreign land? There is so much unknown for Maria and her son, even as there was unknown for Mary and her son so many years before. But Maria trudges on across the hot desert sands, her son in her arms, crying out to God to provide them water, life-giving water, for the child that's in her arms before death overtakes them both. She is searching for hope, and for the life-giving waters that only God will provide. If the truth were known, many of us would have preferred that Matthew left these 10 verses out of his gospel. These stories of escape to Egypt, of Jesus as refugee, of the massacre of the infants, they don't fit into our Christmas holiday plans and into our family celebrations and into our gift giving. They make us uncomfortable. And we wish the pastor had avoided the text. But they are part of the gospel story. They're part of the Christmas story. And to a significant number of persons in the world today, as in Matthew's day, they speak of hope. And so it is that an American writer would find these verses celebrated in a refugee camp where they are remembered as the day that the Christ child became a refugee in a foreign land. In another land far away, a light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There are children whom society would find it easier to forget. But even in this faraway land, there is a light that shines before others and good works that are being recognized. On August 20, the year 2000, here at Union Center, we commissioned Grace Michelin for her ministry in Vietnam. This morning, we had planned to show you a clip from a 60-minute documentary on Grace done by Vietnamese television entitled The Silent American. Unfortunately, we're having technology problems, and our internet connection is not fast enough to allow us to show the clip. But there is, in the Green Weekly Connection, a link to the entire documentary, and I would encourage you to watch it. In a ministry that began in Vietnam when Grace had to keep quiet about what she was doing as a silent American in Vietnam, to a time when Vietnam television is recognizing the work that she is doing with blind children in the schools in Vietnam. She is being recognized, and light is shining in the darkness. I'm sure that Joseph and Mary did not understand why God would allow Herod to do such evil in the area surrounding Bethlehem. Why they needed to leave in the middle of the night and flee to Egypt. But they responded to God's call, and the infant Jesus became a refugee who would years later bring hope to refugees in Honduras and elsewhere. And there is so much pain and suffering remaining in the world today that we do not understand. But when you and I listen and respond to God's call, like Grace did in responding to a call to Vietnam, we too may discover that God's purpose in using us is to bring God's light into places of darkness and a bit of hope where life often seems hopeless to so many persons. May it be true of us that we might help to bring God's light into places of darkness. It's our opportunity now to share with one another our joys, concerns, announcements we may wish to share with the church family.
This is Kenzie, and I had some tests done and they found something they weren't expecting. My kidneys are not functioning properly, so I will be going to see a kidney specialist. Please keep me in mind.
Thank you for sharing, Kenzie, and we'll keep you there.
That night always requires lots of adults to bring their
Keep going.
Okay. The Children's Department this year is really called Operation Underwear for a orphanage in Villa Allende in Argentina, and we will continue collecting children's underwear and money for that through the month of January. So if anyone wants to participate in that, thank you.
This is Rick. I have a wonderful joy. 2 weeks ago yesterday, Laura graduated from college. Double major in 4.5 years. She went through the honors program and made that with flying colors. Ended up with over a 3.8 GPA. And then a week ago, we found out she was elected to the who's who of University of Southern Indiana.
For those of you sitting up here and over here, probably may not have noticed, but we're glad to have Frank and Jennifer Williams worshiping with us today. Welcome. Let us join in prayer. Oh God, on this first Sunday after Christmas,